So the book we're going to talk about today is one of the books from the Secret Project that Brandon Sanderson did, which was a Kickstarter that he started back in the spring of 2022, where he talked about that he was releasing 4 different books. And this is one of the books that he had released. I believe so far 2 of them have been released, and there's another one that's upcoming in October. This one is called The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. I haven't read a ton of Brandon Sanderson, but I've gotten into the Mistborn trilogy and I really enjoyed that. I saw this one at the library and I picked this one up. It was kind of slow going in the beginning. It took me about 150 pages to get into it and to really get the vibe of it. And what's funny is the handbook is a big part of the story, because it comes into the story and this guy wakes up in a field and there's like this burnt outline around his body, and then there's just like burned pages everywhere from the handbook, and he doesn't remember who he is or what he was doing or why he's in this place. He's like, what is even going on? And as you go through the book, each chapter in the beginning of it kind of has like some of the info from this handbook. That part I'm like, God, this is really boring reading this, because it's in like every chapter in the beginning and it's like several pages of it. I'm like, and then he comments on it how it's like a 300-page book that's basically like one big long ad. And I was like, is this gonna like detract from the book? But at some point it stops being like all of that. It stops having all those pages in the beginning of every chapter, and you get more into the story. And it's funny because Sanderson even like calls it out, because he says at one point, in which I thought was hilarious, and he's like, 1 star, barf up some alphabet soup and you might create a more useful text. And I thought that was really funny, because I was like, God, this is kind of boring. But at about 150 pages in, like, it totally picks up, it gets good. I freaking loved it. I love the ending. I loved how the story evolved, and as the main character like figures out who he is and what he's doing there and what he used to do. So you come into the story, and as you start to like gather where you are, he's in medieval England, as maybe the title of the book would suggest, or this really boring brochure that's 300 pages long about selling you different interdimensional packages to go be a wizard in medieval England and rule the land as you should see fit. He gets there, he goes to this town. I don't even know if you'd call it a town. He finds this first settlement. There is a lord and lady that kind of oversee it, and some other townsfolk that are there, and there's this other woman there at the time. She's a scop, which is someone who says verses that are supposed to strengthen rune stones to protect the towns against, people who might come and attack them and whatnot. And so he's kind of getting the lay of the land and getting the vibe of this medieval England, and then like he starts to remember some of his past. He sees these guys that are looking for someone, and they think, oh, maybe they're looking for me, and maybe they know who I am. So he's like, okay, I gotta go find out about these people. And then he comes in to see who they are, and he's like, uh-oh. And he recognizes one of the guys, or maybe both of them, and is like, these guys probably want me dead. So weird, bad stuff is afoot. And then he starts to think, okay, did I come in here to like take these people down or what? And it's kind of a crazy story as he starts to figure out who he is, who these bad guys are, and then there might be a few other people that he might know from his former life as well that are in this story. He kind of bonds with the people of the times, and also he has like some of these like augments, and the augments, like he can have like night vision, and he has healing nanites, so if he gets cuts and stuff, he can access his nanites and heal. And so he tries to give off the vibe that he's like a wizard, but everyone seems to think he's an elf. And he comes into the town originally just to kind of get his bearings and whatnot, but then he kind of plays into what the people of the town believe him to be, and this leads them off on some crazy misadventures, and at one point starting to go after these bad guys who are just gonna try and take over this land for their evil devices and basically ruin the whole place in this dimension that he's in. And then when he finds out who he used to be, and it's not as maybe exciting or good or kind of like a loser, he comes to terms with it and realizes that he still has the chance to be something great and something pretty amazing. And so like the whole message of the story was pretty cool. It just was fun. The characters were good, but yeah, it was a little slow going. But after that, we're off running, and it was a fun story. Whimsical, weird, and wacky. If you like Brandon Sanderson, you'll probably like this, maybe. I don't know, because this was not... Mistborn is a totally different animal. This was a bit more like modern interspersed with ye olden days, so you may or may not like this. If you've read this book, let me know down in the comments what you thought of it, because I feel like this book would definitely be hit or miss for a lot of people. I was really surprised that I ended up liking it so much, because at the beginning I was like, this is kind of boring, because usually my other experience with the other books, I was so immediately just drawn into everything in the story that I was like hit the ground running and I couldn't stop reading them. But once I hit the point in this book, I couldn't stop reading it, but it took me a little bit to get there. So if you like modern day mixed in with back in the day and a little bit of magic and all of that stuff, you may like the Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England by Brandon Sanderson. And if you're a fan of Brandon Sanderson, the next video coming up will be about a book written by Brandon Sanderson. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.